slide there. This one here, I think, yeah, there we go. Okay, good. Because what you had at the end there was what are the factors that are internal to communities that build resilience, and what are the kind of things that are harming communities' ability to bounce back from some of these shocks. And that's exactly where I'd like to start. Because in the context of the ICCA Consortium, that is the Indigenous Peoples and Community Conserved Areas Consortium, group of NGOs looking at supporting exactly the kind of communities you've heard about this morning. And we wanted to look at how is the law either supporting communities' resilience to these shocks or further undermining. And we looked at international law, national laws, judgments as well, and then we looked at how communities who are not just, who have agency, how are they reacting to these laws, how are they using various laws to promote their interests and bounce back from some of these things. We also looked at non-legal forms of support as well, which are very important. I will focus, for the time being, on the legal side of things. So no surprise to anybody here, communities are caught between development and conservation. Yeah? But what was very interesting, and this came out of the 15 national studies that we ran, is that the law is essentially holds the way communities are either able to use the law to stop development projects, to stop ill-considered conservation projects, or end up being completely undermined by these kinds of these activities. And I'm going to speak to a little bit about that now. So first of all, I don't want to just be the harbinger of bad news. There are some positive developments. There are increasing numbers of relatively well thought out laws. There are some good judgments coming from the regional courts, the American Court on Human Rights, for example. We just had a very good case come out of that. And national laws as well. But across the board, 15 countries from Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific underscore this main point in bold and italicized. That laws and institutions are continuing to undermine these systems. What I mean by that is it's not the law themselves necessarily that is undermining it, although that is a factor, but it's the fact that the law undermines communities' resilience to these external influences. And how is it doing that? Communities are not involved in drafting of laws. When those laws are implemented, those quite often they do actually transgress basic human rights standards, both procedural and substantive. And when that happens and communities go to court and try and seek redress, they often can't get standing, just costs of going to court and all the rest of it. You know, access to justice is a motto, it's not a reality. And in that context, we are here, the IUCN Congress, just down the road in Chengbong Village. They are facing exactly these issues. This is exactly what's going on. And as I talk some more, you can sort of consider exactly that. And what's the second aspect of this? I mean, the report's quite rich. Do have a look at them. But there's this particular issue of fragmenting local systems. The fact that the laws don't support or undermine every aspect in a community which a community would need to be resilient to these kinds of shocks, including the customary laws and traditional systems. Ken just mentioned that. Land rights is critical. Janice mentioned the land rights issue, subsoil resources, etc. You can almost break down every aspect of a community and where they are, and you can see how the law and the laws undermine each one of those. So in this context, resilience thinking is this idea of the bowl that was introduced earlier by Mike. The idea is that there is a ball inside a bowl, and a very resilient system is a very concave bowl. It's very difficult to knock the ball out. And an increasingly unresilient system is a flatter thing, so a small upset and the system is out of sync. So the way we're thinking about this at the moment is in this context, law is the bowl, where you have strong human rights, great access to justice, and all the rest of these kind of laws, a full system of laws. Communities' internal resistance is supported by that legal framework, and obviously I've spoken to the opposite of that. Very briefly, the overall recommendations are therefore that you have to take, if you're you're involved in conservation, supporting resilient food systems, etc., one needs to, in the very first instance, move way out from that and look at the fundamental issues of human rights at the national level, the way laws are developed, who's involved in that, how they implemented, access to justice, those macro issues. They're critical. If you don't have, for example, the rule of law in country, everything else that one could develop, such as a bespoke socio-ecological law, etc., doesn't carry very much weight for the local community. This is a discussion we're having just before this. If you can't actually go and challenge government agencies that don't abide by the provisions of that law. So what are we proposing here? Legislating for, as well obviously as the macro issues, legislating and implementing laws for integrated socio-ecological systems, not for specific parts of a system, but looking at a landscape as a whole and looking at how the law that is being particularly bad, I would have to say, and looking at the integration of local systems can actually legislate and be implemented for working living systems. The legal reviews do highlight some very interesting laws. For example, one from Africa that people may know about, the Conservancy law. It's a wildlife law actually, but it's very linking communities, wildlife, and as a result, land and whole systems together. There are some very good examples. It's not being done enough. So my last 3 slides, I'm proposing a new idea which is emanating from some of this thinking. Previously as well, from all 3 speakers, we've heard about the links between farmers and livestock keepers and and again, there are these concepts of farmers' rights, livestock keepers' rights. Where do these rights come from? There is no convention on farmers' rights or livestock keepers' rights. If you're a farmer, you go looking, you go fishing for your rights across different laws, and you build up your body of rights from various places. So here you've got human rights. I'm a farmer. I'm owed some human rights. There are also potentially some cultural heritage rights that I can go and garner because of the way my life. I have some of those. Biodiversity, agriculture, obviously, etc. These are called integrated rights theories or integrated rights approach. And Darrell Posey is a man I've been influenced by quite a lot recently. Some of you may or may not know this person, but interesting ideas coming out of the traditional resource rights. So we've been thinking this through about how can you, great, I've got that. So how can you start actually bundling these different livelihood-based rights systems and looking at a sort of integrated approach. What would be the main forms of rights for all these different groups that often over-intersect, as you heard from the last presentation? And are we really talking about something like biocultural rights, the rights that should be owed naturally to people who are conserving the world's remaining biological and cultural diversity? And this is my last slide. I hope you can see that. This is the underdrawing for the diagram in a book we're writing at the moment. But what we try to do here is look at the law from a community perspective. Natural justice works directly with local communities, and often our challenge is trying to explain to communities who understand landscapes in very connected ways, apologizing about how lawyers complicate things and create totally disconnected legal frameworks. So what we're doing here, again, it's the draft drawing, but you can see the landscape of all these different parts that the community will be involved in, and we're trying to then build up the law from there, going and finding the law. We've been working for the last few months on something we want to call the Convention on Biocultural Diversity, which is an integrated rights approach to international law, where we have scoured every international law we can find, found the particular provisions that would fit under each one of these rights headings, and build it up that way. So when a community member says, hey, Harry, what are my rights to custom uses? One doesn't give a convoluted academic answer, read this 130-page report. One can immediately say, here is the bundle of rights owed to you under international law related to this, and you can go from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. We can take some comments, questions, points of clarification for 3-4 minutes. Yes, Peggy?
Is this on?
It's on.
So, when I look at your picture, I mean, my first reaction was, where is the land ownership, the tenure issues? And I see it up there as a little piece.
Okay.
But, you know, to me then it looks like a very fragmented approach because, you know, the whole picture is land, right, and resources. And so I'm wondering whether this approach is going to, in some ways, take away from that central issue.
The central issue being land. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, hopefully not. And again, it's very interesting. I mean, these legal reports, the 15 countries underscore your point 100%. Every single one of them says land rights is the absolute basis, the foundation for all of this. Your point's taken on board, maybe we need to revise the story. I think the idea here was just to show that these issues are inherently linked. I mean, for example, here you've got right to information, decision-making, access to justice. That right would underlay or overlay each one of the other rights, etc. But the attempt, at least, and perhaps we're not quite getting there yet, is to go to exact. And I saw you nodding vigorously at some of it when I was talking about the fragmentation of law, the way law fragments local landscapes. And it would be interesting to talk some more about how one can better reintegrate, integrate the law so it speaks directly to that local reality. So thanks very much for the comment.
Yes, would you like to come up and to the microphone, please? Just say who you are.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Silvia Sánchez, de Perú, y quería comentar que en el caso de Perú, las tierras son públicas, la mayoría pertenecen al Estado, las comunidades indígenas están establecidas como comunidades y tienen un territorio definido, pero solamente tienen uso en lo que respecta al área que es para uso agrícola. El resto está definido como áreas de uso de recursos naturales, mas no tienen derecho a la propiedad. Y son comunidades tanto amazónicas como andinas que se han venido movilizando a lo largo de ese tiempo hasta que vino un proceso republicano y las establecieron, las fijaron. Mi pregunta en ese proceso es cómo emprendemos ese trabajo de territorio, área para procesos indígenas cuando estamos enfrentando un tema de cambio climático donde, especialmente en la Amazonía, todos los rangos sobre los cuales se desplazaban estos grupos indígenas están variando. De hecho, en el Parque Nacional del Manu se ha visto en estos últimos años con mucha frecuencia indígenas no contactados que se han acercado a las poblaciones más comunes, establecidas. Entonces, la pregunta es si se están moviendo por recursos, se están moviendo porque están siendo impactados por otros sistemas y necesitan una mayor dinámica para desplazarse. Hay bastantes preguntas ligadas al tema de territorio y derecho de propiedad. Gracias.
Sí, muchas gracias por las presentaciones. Mi nombre es Osvaldo Munguía, vengo de Honduras, trabajo con la organización PAU en la región noreste de pueblos indígenas. Y bueno, hay varios asuntos aquí. Yo realmente estoy tratando de encontrar en estos talleres como nuevas ideas sobre adaptación, sobre resiliencia, porque lo que estaba presentando el colega anterior ahí con un cuadro de una cacería, un animal que han cazado y distribuyéndolo entre las familias o entre los amigos. Más bien nosotros hemos visto que eso se practicaba hace décadas y ya desapareció. Lo que muy bien apuntaba el otro colega en cuanto a la erosión del conocimiento de la cultura, de la práctica, de la tradición de los pueblos indígenas, que más bien eso es lo que está sucediendo. Entonces cuando estamos presentando ese cuadro como una de las prácticas de resiliencia, pues eso ya desapareció, pues, ¿verdad? Tenemos que comenzar creativamente a buscar realmente otras prácticas de resiliencia y de adaptación, otras prácticas y conceptos que respondan más bien a cómo el comercio y toda la otra cultura afuera del pueblo indígena se está influyendo en el pueblo indígena. Porque los pueblos indígenas realmente están quedando muy expuestos, si vale la expresión, ¿verdad? Expuestos a la influencia del mercado, a la influencia de la radio, de la televisión, de los celulares. Es decir, ya es otro contexto que hay que considerar para buscar cómo hacerlas, cómo buscar la resiliencia. Nosotros como organización hemos trabajado con pueblos indígenas desde hace casi 30 años y una de las primeras cosas que comenzamos trabajando fue precisamente lo que decía creo que la señora, que era la tenencia de la tierra, la tenencia colectiva, porque los países realmente tienen un abordaje de parcela, de tenencia de parcelas, con reforma agraria y todo eso. O sea, los pueblos indígenas realmente esa no es la costumbre, es uso de los hábitats funcionales de los territorios productivos como bosque y no como tierra para el cultivo agrícola. No bien la agricultura que sí la practican en una parcela muy pequeña, pero realmente el medio de vida es el bosque. La cacería, la pesca, la recolección de medicinas que al desaparecer el bosque por la deforestación y el avance de la frontera agrícola desde afuera hacia los territorios indígenas, se pierden muchos recursos, sobre todo relacionados a la medicina tradicional. Entonces, muy importante me parece el abordaje, el enfoque legal, cómo las leyes van realmente a apoyar este asunto de la pérdida de territorios y recursos indígenas por el avance de la frontera agrícola. Esa es una realidad que estamos viviendo todos los pueblos del trópico, por lo menos en Centroamérica y seguramente en el resto del planeta. Si tengo un minuto más.
No, sí, señor, disculpe de cortar usted, pero podemos entrar en esta discusión más grande en la última parte de los comentarios de la hermana de Perú, y sus comentarios son muy valables, muy pertinentes. Pero si podemos guardar esos temas por la discusión general. Hasta ahora, en este momento, lo que hacemos es preguntando puntos de clarificación a los presentadores. Es que tenemos dos presentaciones más. No es para cortar a ustedes, porque lo que dices es muy importantísimo. Pero vamos a regresar a este tema después. ¿Está de acuerdo? Sí, gracias. I'm just saying we're going to let the remaining presenters go ahead and give their presentation, knowing that we have at least half an hour's full discussion at the end, where the important points made by our friends from Peru and Mexico, I think, from Honduras, will be reintroduced in the conversation. So I'll just call on Ian Davidson come.
No, that was great. I think that was.
Yeah. No? I think we're going to come back to these issues, they're very important. in the final discussion. So Ian will be talking about role of biodiversity sites and mobility in crafting resilient treescapes.
Hello, I've created a text of the translators to follow this, so I don't usually present off a written script, but I will this time. So the presentation I'm about to present today is based on a set of case studies undertaken through a research program that I have, and includes a number of graduate students who have helped me sort of introduce some of these ideas and build this out of a number of years of experience. This particular case is undertaken by Carlos Coyan-Noble, who's just near finishing his PhD, and we'll present on that. But first, we'll introduce a little bit of our background conceptual thinking. We have other cases underway, and we tried to cover different types of landscapes. So we have one in Salamanca and Costa Rica, and one starting in a valley agricultural landscape. So we have coastal, forest, and sort of valley case underway. Thanks, Mike, for organizing the panel.